I'm Eric, and I need you to cooperate. Because I'm reminded of the story about there was a contractor. He had a son. He asked the son to build the best house he'd ever built. He gave him, he said, you got, $500,000. Build the best house you can possibly build. What the kid did was he shortchanged the process. He decided he was going to build a shoddy house and make it look good on the outside, but use substandard materials. He cut corners and he pocketed a lot of the money. And then his dad turned around and gave him the house. So he was stuck, as a gift. The moral of that story being you get out of it what you put into it. So I've done my job, I hope, by putting a presentation together for you that I hope you'll find both interesting, useful, and maybe even entertaining. Well, what I need you to do is engage with me and participate when you're asked. Okay, I know you're all IT guys and you'd rather be in your cubes, but at least for this time, try to engage the material and please ask questions. Now, before I start, how many of you have had experience in one form or another with somebody who was a process person? Okay, how many of you have been disappointed at least a little bit by your experience with that process person? Okay, I feel your pain. If you've ever seen the movie Office Space, the Bobs, those are the process guys. They're frequently misunderstood because oftentimes the management tries to come in and force process from top down. It really doesn't work that way. Process, when it's embraced and when it works, comes bottom up, and it requires everybody in the organization to buy in. So hopefully we'll see something. Now, I've entitled this presentation The Whirlwind Tour because there's absolutely no way. I've got 100 slides in this deck, I think. I don't know. I stopped counting about 2:30 or 3 o'clock this afternoon when I decided I finally had to put down the chisel and get to work on the editing. So I could really speak for 4 days on this stuff. Do we have any black belts in the room? Six Sigma black belts? Okay, good. At least I don't have anybody who has more knowledge than I do. I'm not a black belt. I'm actually a CMM guy is my area of expertise, but I am Six Sigma certified at a lower level than that. I was actually going to leverage the black belts if we had them, but if we don't, that's cool. You'll know what I'm talking about in a minute if you've never heard of black belts. Now, process is a big space. Okay, I've already mentioned Six Sigma, CMM. It's one of those things where the history is long, and the terms, like .NET, .NET's one of those kind of overloaded terms. It comes from here, it comes from there, and if you actually need to nail it down, you kind of have a hard time doing it. So if it seems like I'm not entirely linear, it's because process is not entirely linear. It's like trying to describe an elephant to someone who's never seen an elephant and can't see. You really have to get your hands on the whole thing before it all kind of clicks and comes into perspective, okay? So if there's a little bit of, I'm not quite sure, ask the question. We'll stop. But I hope you'll have a better understanding of some of this stuff and how it fits together near the end. And more importantly, I've tried to pull the best of the best to give you some short things you can take and actually put into place without having to have an aneurysm to figure it out. Some of this stuff is real easy to grab and real easy to put into place. So we're going to talk about Dr. Deming, who is known as the father of the TQM movement. I was playing some of his little quotes earlier. Did you like some of that? Kind of mystical. He's the guru. He's the one that folks quote the most. He's the one, well, I don't want to get ahead of myself. Let's see. Then we're going to have an exercise, and there's just lots of stuff. So what's next here? This is Dr. Deming. He was 91 when he died, and that was just a few years ago. I think somebody help me with the date. I didn't put it down. Fairly recently. Within the past 15 years. He developed what he called his system of profound knowledge. That is, if you're going to run an organization and you're going to have people that work for you, these are his prescription for success. Your managers and your people that work in the organization should have an understanding and appreciation of the system. And one of his things was, now realize he worked in manufacturing, but this works just as well in what we do in technology. If any of you work for the banks or stuff, you're working with information. Information is a different kind of commodity, but it still goes through processes and transformations, right? But what he said was that people need an investment and an understanding at a low level of the system. I was watching some video when I was preparing for this presentation. In Japan, there was an organization that sold meat. And in order to become a manager, you had to spend the first 7 years delivering meat to the restaurants and things like that. Really, get it under your nails. So understanding and appreciating the system as a whole before you start fiddling with it. And you guys that have been disappointed by your process folks, right? They're probably coming and fiddle without understanding the system. Understanding variation. This is where we get into the realm of engineering and statistics. If you don't like numbers, that's okay. You can understand the basic of statistics without a calculator. To really do some of it, you need to do some basic math kind of stuff, but it's not past basic algebra to do statistics. Besides, statistics is much more interesting because it's about understanding what the numbers mean and not just doing the calculations. Anybody can do that. So if you find you're not good at math, you might paradoxically be quite good at statistics because it's really about, okay, what does this number mean? The theory of knowledge, and one of the things you'll see a little bit later that Dr. Deming said was that the most important things about a business are not the things you can know or quantify. That is, this kind of contradicts the second one, talking about statistics. Okay, you've told me all of these numbers, but show me the numbers. What is and you were talking about it earlier. What is the value of an unhappy customer? Can somebody quantify, tell me how much money we lost because that customer was unhappy? Or what is the value of this customer who was thrilled and told all of his friends about us? The most important, or how happy are the people that work for me? And will they be working for me 10 years from now when I've invested all of this money in their education and training? We don't know these numbers, but those are the most critical numbers, right? So that's kind of what that point is all about. And finally, understanding that anybody can manage stuff, right? Stuff doesn't go anywhere. You can set that box of blank DVDs on the shelf and it will still be there when you get back, provided someone doesn't steal it. However, when you work with people, that's a fundamentally different undertaking. People are not things, and you can't treat them as such. I wish I had time, and I wish you had the patience to watch Dr. Deming, because watching him talk is kind of like watching that turtle in the Bugs Bunny cartoons, because he talks really slow and he's really drab. I just realized I've been on this slide way too long. But anyway, my point was, and there was a point, people being important. Anyway, people are very important, and I'll come back to that in a minute when I remember what it was I wanted to say. So what I said before, you don't need to understand the whole thing to imply any of it. Just kind of understand a little bit, and a little bit will go a long way. And actually, I think that's what we were talking about in the next slide. Yeah, Pareto. Okay, the dude in the upper left-hand corner is some Italian guy. His name was Pareto. I can't remember what his first name was. It started with a V, like many Italian names do. Anyway, he noticed that in Italy, 20% of the people owned 80% of the land. Then he noticed that 20% of the peas in his garden, the pods, produced 80% of the peas. Well, then this other guy, who I think looks really cool, Joseph Duran, Dr. Duran, who we call the father of quality, was reading up on this stuff at Pareto, and he generalized this principle, the Pareto principle. And what it really means is that 20% of what you do will get 80% of your work done. And it also means that 20% of the, or 80% of the problems are caused by 20% of the input or nodes in your process. So if you can identify those critical few things, which is where we get the word, the factor sparsity. There are lots of factors, but only a small number of them are important when you're talking about the big picture, right? 20% of the people cause 80% of the problems. Actually, I think it's more like 5% of the people cause 80% of the problems. This, as a lot of these, is a rule of thumb. The number varies somewhat. It's somewhere between 50 and 100, right? Because 50 is pure chance. And 100 is absolute predictability. Somewhere in there is 75, and 80 is close enough. So much for statistics, right? This thing on the bottom, that's called a Pareto chart. It's just a fancy histogram. What it's showing you is, you see this little line, the arc up there? Let's say we have some problems in our technology organization. You see where 80% is up here? Right? These are the 5 causes that we've identified. You can see that most of the problems, that is about 80% of the problems in this chart, come from the hard disk and the circuit board. That's a Pareto chart. It's just a fancy bar chart showing you where the 80% is. Or if we were sitting around in a focus group, gee, what should we focus on? How about the hard disk and the printed circuit board, right? You don't have to be a rocket scientist to understand that. There you go. There's one tool you can take home and use. Plot them and find where 80% of the stuff is. And then you can throw a fancy Italian name in and people think you're smart. This is one I just learned about today when I was preparing, actually yesterday when I was preparing for this talk. This is the new 1% rule. They're studying how people act in online communities, like on blogs or where people contribute. Apparently there's a new 1% lurker rule. That is, for any online community, 1% of the people actually create stuff. In this context, that would be me. 5% of the people contribute. In this context, that would be those of you that ask questions. And 90% lurk in the background and watch and see what's going on. There's a lot of study going on in this area, but I think it's interesting and applicable to our particular situation, because I'd like to get that contributor number up above 5% if we can. Actually, I'm sure we will. Any questions so far? Oh, yeah. So what do? I get this question a lot. Oh, where'd it go? So what do you do? And this, we have video for this part. Bear with me. Here's the video. If I can find it. Nope. There it is. This says what is Six Sigma, but it could be used for anything.
So cool. My dad's office. I love this.
Yeah, Michael, this is where all the magic happens.
Okay, let's get started. Question number 1. What's your job?
Senior Executive Statistical Analysis Technician.
You're a senior executive what?
Well, in plain English, I concatenate diverse statistical information to maximize the potential utilization of data.
So, you give people data?
A lot of people think that. No. My job's not about output, it's about throughput.
So, you throughput data?
Well, now you've lost me, son. Oh, listen, Michael, you know the 8 tracks you love so much?
You make them?
No. But because of us, other people who make them are able to make them better.
So you fix stuff?
You could say that, but I wouldn't. This is the performance index before my involvement, and this is after.
Okay, so you're responsible for this?
You can't credit me with that. That's probably a statistical anomaly.
But you made the chart, right?
I wish.
So do I. Hey. Do you have customers?
No, they're more like clients.
But you have clients.
Sort of.
And you provide them a product?
It's more like a service.
A service?
Well, not...
To maximize the potential utilization of the data.
If we did that, we'd go out of business. We look at the chi-squared here, apply the standard deviation here, and correlate the results with the actualization median here. And that's what I do. And I can't make it any clearer than that.
I'm just gonna say you're a farmer. Harvest time for the farmer. At dawn, my dad and I were out in the field picking carrots fresh off the trees.
Kelso, carrots don't... That's good. You should put that down.
Okay, let me get back to my thing here. Let's see. So we want to go to slide number 7. Oh, you have to control in this version. I'm so glad they included that on the instructions. Control F5. Is that it? No. It used to just be F5. There it is. That's interesting, though. Not into that. So we were back to when we started, right? You got your snake oil salesmen who just want to go in and fiddle with stuff. And then there are folks, kind of like if you've been disappointed, you probably heard somebody spout out gobbledygook like that guy that was just in the video we were talking about. To actually fix problems using process improvement methodologies, You have to be down on the ground with people because people are what matter, right? You can twiddle and talk numbers all day long, but it's the meaning behind the numbers. And the people who live and breathe and work in the system, who created the systems, if we're talking hardware systems or software systems, or more generally, processes, the people that live in those processes, who can really tell you a lot about them because they're there every day. There's no way in the world I can come in as a consultant from outside and know anywhere near what the people who live in the organization know about it. However, it can sometimes be useful to have somebody from the outside look in if they're willing to listen to what you have to say, to show you some opportunities where you might be able to fix some things. Let's see what I put in here. Okay, so the benefits, this is the sales pitch, the benefits of process improvement as a whole, whether we're talking about Six Sigma, whether we're talking about CMM, whether we're talking about using some of the lean approaches or anything like that. Always develop and make the cost of things. But as we'll see in a later presentation, the focus is not on cost. Focus is on quality. Cost takes care of itself as a function of quality. Dealing with your service level agreement type stuff, that gets some of the CMM stuff. How much does quality cost you when it's good, and how much do you lose when it's bad? That's some of the things that these tools can tell you. Also, how fast is your stuff and how good is it? If you have on any of your performance plans, your annual performance plans, which we'll learn a little bit later, are evil. But if you have in your best-in-class type objectives, doing process improvement can help you. This is one of my favorite slides because this really shows you the meat of where the benefit of doing process improvement, which any of these things we talk about, even just coming here and having training on process, will improve your process. Repeatability. Used to be back in the day when people were doing Yahoo programming and writing code, you didn't, if you were lucky if you had a flow chart, much less an actual requirements document or any kind of low-level design specifications. But as you have a more repeatable process, you can start to predict how much things will cost. You can start to eliminate time overruns and things like that. When you start to collect data, you can analyze it and find trends. You understand the characteristics of what it is you're putting out, not just the ones you set out to make, but your hidden flaws and things like that. Scalable is actually the one that I think is the most useful. When you have a good process, it doesn't rely on personal heroics in order to execute it. Now, some people find that a little bit threatening, kind of like the guy in Jurassic Park who steals all the secrets in his shaving cream can and runs off the island, right? We always want to keep some things just for ourselves because we don't want to be replaced, because we live in a world where people are easily replaceable. The world we're describing up here is a world where you're not easily, where everybody's valued and you don't have to worry about being replaced because you're valued for being who you are. It's a different mindset to get people into. It's a big cultural shift. Immature processes are characterized by people who kind of make it up as they go along. We need this done. Okay, I'll go do it. I don't know how, but we don't have a manual for that. We don't have a diagram or anything like that. I'll just go do it. Or I'll do it like we've always done it. Or I'll go talk to Betsy down there. She's been here 40 years, and if she dies, the company's going to go under. Highly dependent on the current people, like I just said. Relies on superheroes. There's low visibility into what is going on if you're the manager, so you resort to horrible tactics like annual reviews or things like that. We'll talk about that later. When you put new technology in place, it's kind of risky, and you have no idea how much things cost if you do. This is a slide. We'll get to some of the CMM stuff in the latter part of the presentation, but you can tell the date. This came from, you can tell if I didn't have the table in the way. Year 2000. This is a 12-year-old slide. This is the one we were using back in the day. But when you don't have good process, you essentially have chaos. You're too busy doing what it is you were hired to do, and you don't have time to make all these process improvements that this process guy's up here talking about. That's because you're reacting to things. By focusing on the process itself, it allows you time to be proactive. Problems with fires are that the fire is in control, and the people that are working on the problem often get burned. Not only that, but that problem you thought you put to bed rekindles later, and so you have to come back and visit it again. Things don't change in the world of process like that. On the other hand, a mature process is actually written down and understood by everybody in the organization. That is, it's not just what we say, the way we say we do it. We actually do it every time the same way. Management from the top down supports it, but you build consensus from the bottom up. I need to move more quickly or I'm never going to get through all these slides. I like this slide because I think it's pretty. But the goal of process improvement when it's done right is like what you see at BMW or Honda, NASA, places where they understand that in order to get this thing done at all, we have to do it right or we're going to be out of business. Everybody. And the people are rewarded, not for being better than everybody else, because that means I'm in competition with you, right? But if I'm rewarded for turning out quality products and we're all working together, it's a complete transformation. I think IT is ripe for it if we understood it better. Okay, so this is the guy, Deming. We mentioned him a little bit earlier. Not enough to do your best, you have to know what to do. And then do your best, right? A lot of people are coming in every day just doing the very best they can. They don't have any understanding of the system in which they live. They don't have time to go talk to the guy downstream from them, right? And see how to improve the process. He's the guy that started TQM. That's one of those acronyms, Total Quality Management. And I'll put it in perspective here in a minute. Okay, now in a minute we're going to break up into groups. And I know you're going to hate that part because it means you're going to have to move. And here's how we're going to do it. Find where your birthday is. All right, so like if you were born before February the 10th, well, you're going to be in Group W. Anybody recognize the reference? The Group W bench? Alice's Restaurant? I don't know. It just came off the top of my head. Group, there we go. So if you're born before February 10th, you have to sit on the Group W bench. You can put those papers out now if you like, just wherever. If you have, oh, they're out already. All right. February 10th, Area 51. You see how that goes? Does anybody not understand what group you're going to be in when we break up here in a minute? Lock the doors so they can't get out. Any questions on which group you're going to be in? If you forget, you can come up. I printed that slide out just in case somebody forgot. But that's not time for that yet. Oh, maybe it is. Let's see. Final analysis, people. You come sit by me. And overachieving squid, I'll take you too. So you guys up here on these two tables. But before we do that, I would like you to note a Zoot suit, because this actually does tie into not the exercise, but believe it or not, the process discussion we're about to have. I don't know, it's just how my crazy mind thinks. It's Veterans Day, I'm trying to make it all fit. A Zoot suit is characterized by a big wide hat. At the time, they would have been made out of felt like most other hats. Ultra roomy slacks with tight, yards and yards of fabric, but cinched here and down here, okay? Yards of natural fiber fabric. Super long, 3/4 inch trench coat. Got the chain, precious metals, and fancy shoes with spats, as if you didn't have enough leather in your shoes already. We'll talk about Zoot suits in context in a little bit. But if you'll mill about the room here, you'll see what I'm talking about. Whoops, wrong. I have to go to this one, I guess. I guess I need them both, don't I? All right, hang on. So we'll take 2 minutes. Oh, I have to find it now. Go find your orange piece of paper and relocate yourselves. hear me now? Can you hear me now? I don't know. I can't hear me. So anyway, pretty creative, huh? That's just for you gamers. I'm not a gamer. Man, we got a lot of birthdays in whatever that group was. What's that group? Who? Section 8. Well, that explains it. Good people, the Section 8 people.
They're all moving to Colorado.
21. Let's see. F5. Maybe. F5. Go to slide. Is there anybody that has not heard that song before? It's from the Swing Revival in the 80s. Cool song. And actually, it's Veterans Day, and I'm working on this presentation, right? I could take you through the thought process, but you wouldn't find that interesting. Did you know that there actually was a Zoot riot? And it actually occurred in 1943 in Los Angeles. Now, what had happened was, it's actually complicated to explain all of the factors. There's a PBS movie on the Zoot riot. I'm giving you the link there in case you're interested and want to read about it. And again, it's complicated and it's layered. But remember what we were talking about just a minute ago? The components of a Zoot suit, right? So I forget this dude's name. He was a very popular Hispanic actor at the time. And there were a couple of gangs. One was in Chicago and one was in San Diego. And the one in San Diego was made up by a lot of the children of Mexican immigrants who really were not culturally Mexican. They weren't culturally American. They had a gang. They had their own look, and they took it from this dude. So one day, in June of 1943, some sailors who were on leave, is one of the lyrics in the song, actually got in a big fight with some of the gang members, beat them senseless, and took, as you can see right down here, actually took their clothes, took their zoot suits. Now, a lot of it was just purely racial, to be honest, but some of it was cultural as well, in that there was some other stuff going on at the time, the least of which was World War II. The reason why that was important is because during World War II, resources, now you see where we're getting with this thing, resources were being rationed. I thought this was kind of neat. Ladies, you'll find it very interesting. On President Roosevelt instituted with Congress the War Production Board. Their job was to try to conserve resources at home so we could make guns and ammunition and boots and parachutes and uniforms for the soldiers, right? On the left-hand side, you'll see they're actually giving you the length and width of hem sizes for various types of clothing. On the right-hand side, this is from the Lane Bryant catalog, ladies. These are shoes that were not being rationed because they didn't have any leather in them. I don't know how you say it. Espadrilles, what do you call those? The bottom are made out of jute cord. The tops are made out of fabric. These were not being rationed. So at the time, lots of fabric, lots of leather, lots of felt, wool felt, were being rationed, and so to some of these folks, it seemed like the guys wearing zoot suits were flying in the face, working against the war effort. Some of the background behind the zoot suit riots, just in case you've never heard of them. I'd never heard of them. I thought it was kind of interesting. But the big thing was everybody was working together to try to turn out tanks and guns and ammunition and uniforms, boots, meals for the folks, the soldiers off at war. And just here's some of the pictures. You'll notice their focus is on production. Right? We kind of entered the war late as a country, the U.S. did. We had to ramp up for the war. After the war, everybody else was pretty much devastated. But because we didn't have to fight too much of the war in the continental U.S., we had created this incredible military production machine. But the Axis powers, the Germans, the Japanese, and some of the others, and most of Europe where the war was fitting, was completely devastated, and their ability to produce stuff was gone. And the folks just felt really bad because they had been beaten and demoralized. So it is into that world where we place Dr. Deming. Dr. Deming worked during the war in the U.S. factories to help them churn out stuff for the war. After the war, we sent them to Japan. And they're still kicking our butts. Because they took what we had forgotten after the war, right? Dr. Deming said, it's easy to be a good manager in an expanding economy, right? Piece of cake. And so from the time the U.S. won the war until about 1968, by his estimations, all time before I was around, it was easy to manage because all we had to do was make stuff. It didn't really matter if it was any good. Then our guy helped rebuild some of these same very same countries that now dominate in quality. And we'll talk about technology as well as a function of quality. That came about 20 years after that because the technology was trying to catch up. But the same process. And these are a couple of his quotes. My very favorite one, "We are here to make another world." Can you imagine walking into post-war Japan and actually having the tools, and they actually wanted him. He came over to help a couple of folks. The word got out, and all the Japanese wanted him. And then this one's great, too. "It's not necessary to change. Survival is not mandatory." Okay, remember that? I told you there was a formula in here. It's bad to focus on price because people, you'll see down here the corollary, people who focus on the cost of things, when you focus on the cost, you actually decrease quality over time. Cost goes up, quality goes down. When you focus on quality, cost goes down, quality goes up. I really meant to kind of boil these down and bulletize them a little bit better than that. I'll try not to hit them all. Or we were talking. Oh, this is a slide I forgot to mention. I need a job. If anybody needs a process guy or somebody who could speak in front of groups. Constancy of purpose. That has to do with, is this business going to be, is this company, is your software organization, is your technology organization, your service organization, got any plans for being here 20 years down the road? Or are you just concerned with what your quarterly profits look like? And I think we all, especially living here in Charlotte, knows what it looks like when companies put the bottom line, this quarter's profits, ahead of the long-term health of the company or the country or the economy. I'll try not to belabor that point. I think we're all painfully aware. Get rid of inspection. Inspect the process. You can do some periodic inspections of what the stuff you're making, but if you spend your time focusing on the stuff you're making and not how you make them, then you can't transform your organization. And a whole bunch of other stuff. The fourth one here, talk about getting rid of the price tag. Mentioned that. That's me. Need a job. Training on the job. Leadership. Drive out fear so that everyone can work effectively. That one works with the one above it. And one down. The annual review is one of the things that Dr. Deming felt was, as I mentioned before, a big stumbling block to an institutionalization of quality. That is, if I have to worry, if only one of us can have this much money that they told us we can have for bonuses this year, then somebody has to win and somebody else has to lose. Right? What Dr. Deming said was, if you're going to do that, just have a lottery. Just do it randomly. Otherwise, when you're in competition, I need to do better than you do, and so we can't really truly work together. It's hard to wrap your mind around it because we're Americans and we're kind of independent. But this is one of those things, eventually we're going to have to make that shift if we want to compete with the folks who don't think that way. Let's see. I'm trying to decide how much of this I want to spend. Yeah, this is where we're talking about awarding business on the basis of the price tag. We talked about, I'm going the wrong way, aren't I? Yep, I think we're going to do the exercise now. I could belabor these points, but I won't get to the good stuff. All right, so where's my groups? All right, I'm going to let these guys get a head start. Don't open B until you're supposed to. Don't open B until you're supposed to. You guys start. Huh? Go ahead, start. Open A.
Oh, you just said open.
That's good. Open A. Okay, now let's see. I forget what you guys are supposed to do. Check my notes. Make sure I do this right. Oh, yeah. All right. You can open A, but not B. Should we open A and not B? A and not B. You're right. You're ahead of me. A, but not B. And we'll do you guys different. A, but not B. 5 minutes starts now. The rest of you, don't worry about it. What'd you guys experience?
Here's our spokesman.
Do we have a mic, like one of those mics? Bring that thing on out here. Hold on, we'll get a mic to you. We're going to empower you. That's a process word. We're going to empower you. We'll get to that in a minute. That's actually quadrant 2. Here, check it, check. Is this thing on? No. More volumage, please. So, did you guys, what did it say? Would you read to the group what it said in your envelope A? This is what their envelope A said. Yellow. We'll get to another one. Here, honey, talking to this one. Get it out of the car. Okay, now. Thank you.
Okay, that's better. It says, you are special. Pat yourself on the back. Sorry. In a few minutes, your group will be asked to perform a task where you will need to make a decision together. Right now, discuss amongst yourselves how you should go about reaching such a decision. Items you may wish to consider could include roles and responsibilities, which would include leadership, record keeping, etc., tools, actual or virtual, that may employ in such a task, methods to manage conflict, and time management.
Okay, so you guys actually, your instructions, right? And your instructions were, first, figure out how you're going to solve a problem. I didn't tell you what the problem was, right? But figure out how you're going to solve it. Talk about who's going to do what, right? You're probably going to have some conflict, but to talk about resolving that conflict. And then go to work on it. Now, you guys didn't have those instructions, did you? Can you read us what was in your envelope A?
You are special. Pat yourself on the back. Proceed directly to open envelope B, distribute its contents, and follow further printed instructions.
So their job was to dive right into it. And what does your instruction set say?
I'm supposed to observe the different groups and see if I can tell the differences.
Right. So their job was to watch you guys. So now tell me, how was your experience? Do we have that microphone yet? That works great. So he's going to bring it down here, and then we'll take turns and we'll share it around because this is a useful experiment, hopefully. Here it comes. Now tell us about your experience.
Okay, I don't know if we followed the directions exactly. We didn't really decide any one leader or anything quite like that, but we discussed. We did? Oh.
Well, he was the leader.
No, tell us.
Well, basically, we were just trying to focus on sustainability and procreation in the new world. So we went down person by person and discussed the pros and cons and made our list that way.
So you guys decided what your factor was for making a decision, and you agreed on criteria before you began holding your candidates up to the standard, right? You came up with some sort of objective criteria.
Yes.
That was your experience.
Yes.
But your experience of choosing a leader was somewhat nebulous? Yes. Who had a strong group leader? Okay, let's talk to these guys. Here, you're closest, so you get the mic.
The first thing we did was choose a leader. It was the guy that opened envelope A. Having a leader made it move more effectively forward. But basically we followed the same approach, making a decision based on criteria, throwing out some arguments, and seeing if we were reaching consensus. Mostly it was nodding of heads or shaking of heads.
Was there any point on which there was a big disagreement, relatively speaking? I heard a yes somewhere?
Yeah.
Give that lady the mic.
I can talk really loud. Okay. No.
Well, what was the disagreement about?
We were talking about the last person that we were going to choose. Was it going to be the 1-year-old, or was it going to be Maxine, who doesn't speak English? The only reason we picked Maxine was because of the procreation. Heather, the 1-year-old, was going to take a long time to get to the procreation, someone brought up the argument that it would have been a totally different gene pool, so it wouldn't be so much,
Did
same
anybody
gene.
else consider that?
And,
Uh-huh.
and at the end we came up with, I refuse to talk.
That's okay.
What do you call it? At the end we came up with Maxine because due to the fact that it would have been good to have the extra gene pool, but at the same time, a 1-year-old is very hard to raise. And if we're going into a situation where it's a brand new world, there's nothing built, there's nothing.
So one of your criteria, it sounds like, we don't call it out, was the relative benefit of each person. If you chose them, what would they be able to give back to the organization? Is that how it went over here? Somebody from this group with some feelings.
What do you want me? Oh, well, those 4 guys over there, they voted for the baby. I don't know why, but I guess they just like babies. I don't know. And then, of course, they ended up with, oh, well, there's women to take care of the baby. I don't know. Yeah, we all voted. Oh, that kid.
Talk to us about your experience as the leader of this particular group. What did you encounter? Because you didn't come to this meeting tonight really thinking you were going to have to do anything but sit back and take it in, or maybe think, but now all of a sudden you're thrust in a position of leadership. What did you encounter?
Well, we didn't really vote on a leader. We just kind of we actually wanted to open the envelope B when other people were starting to do it. We didn't want them to get ahead of us.
Uh-huh.
And, we just talked about it. We saw what it was, and it started eliminating some candidates that weren't ideal people for the trip. And we left with about 5 people, and then we just voted for the last 2. And the baby was really the only controversial one we couldn't throw out.
How were you guys with the baby? Uh-oh. That's probably my fault. We could trace that defect back to the 1%. And I'm not the 1% with the millions. Okay, these guys were the observers. I want you guys to pass this around and talk about just individually what you saw.
It looked like the people that had, I guess, the process, they were going down the list. Like they had more determination, they had more direction, but the others seemed to be quieter and didn't seem to have as much discussion.
Did you guys feel a little lost? Because you guys and you guys and you guys had an envelope that said, just go right at it, without any talk about what to do in terms of, do we choose a leader? Do we have a? Could you feel a difference? Could you guys feel a difference? What did you guys see? Because they won't know because they didn't notice the instructions were any different.
There's more interaction on this side. That side wasn't making any progress.
What else did you guys see?
Well, I watched Gammarays, and there was just nothing going on. I mean, really, everybody was just looking at their piece of paper. Moon Unit Zappa.
Where's Zappa? Okay, that's these guys.
Yeah, those guys they had a clear facilitator, and they were really making progress. Section 8 had a lot of chaotic debating going on. I couldn't tell that they were getting any closer to hitting the number they were looking for. It was just, they were taking 2 steps forward and 1 step back and going back and talking about somebody they talked about earlier and, resurrecting people from the dead or whatever.
They were on task, right?
And the top shelf group.
Where's the top shelf group?
Those guys, it looked like everyone was reading and 2 people were discussing. The other ones were spectators.
Well, let me ask you this, top shelf group, and I'll ask the other 2. Did you get, in the time allotted, did you pick 7 people? Yes. All right. How do each of you feel about what you chose? Each one of you talk about it.
I don't have anything to say right now.
Well, I came up with 6 that we were all in agreement with. So it really came down to who was going to be our 7th. We really kicked that around the most. We were
Okay.
all pretty much in agreement with the first 6.
Yeah, I'll reinforce that. We did set some criteria. We're looking to further the race, so we figured that we needed 4 or 5 females, and we didn't want to risk having just one male and maybe have problems. So we said we had to have two males.
Who were your 7?
Here's
Here's who they chose.
We had Michael being a male and to give us some balance in life, and Dale, the engineer, and we conceded taking his wife. And then we felt an electrician, and that being 30s was a good choice. And then Betty, Betty, the 6th grade teacher, and then Jane, the doctor, was one of our first picks, but we were a little bit concerned of her age. We did feel that she had a good 5 years of procreation, and then it became a toss-up for our final female between Mary and Maxine, and we chose Maxine.
They chose the same thing. Let me see what these guys did. Was your list substantially different? Tell us about your experience.
Well, I don't know what our observer was observing.
How many of you are deathly afraid that I'm going to bring you the microphone next?
Okay. Because it went kind of really straightforward, and we had a full consensus. We had very low argument. Everyone participated and said why of their choices, and most of our choices were the same. I think we changed one.
Mm-hmm.
But our choice was Dale, the 23-year-old engineer, Chua's 21-year-old wife, because they refused to be separated. We chose Rick, the 40-year-old policeman, because we know that there has to be order. And he was a good, we needed another male, like they said. We changed one. Our 4 initial ones were the teacher, of course, the doctor, Chu and his wife. Those were the ones that, it just fell into place. And then we came over to, we all had a sentimental for the 1-year-old female, but it was impractical, so we canceled it.
Let me ask you this: If I had given Chu, if I had assigned Chu leukemia, but given her 15 years to live, would it have made a difference? Just out of curiosity. So her health wasn't a concern, but had it been, you might have chosen differently. What did you see?
What I saw, to be honest, Doug's a process guy, so he read through and he was really thinking about things, and I just started tearing into envelopes, and I started doing the actual process here of doing what y'all were doing, and then I was told afterwards, no, read this, you dummy, you're supposed to go around and observe. So once I actually started doing what I was supposed to do, and it's true that side may have come up with a decision before we had a chance to observe, because we had kind of a step 1 that took about 10 minutes or so, and it's quite possible that they compromised and came up with a solution before we actually observed. But going around seeing from table to table, I kind of got sidetracked for a little bit during this, but I thought it was interesting that some people were choosing who should die first, and then there was other people that were choosing who should live first. So I thought it was kind of interesting that you had some people that were kind of bloodthirsty and other people that were more so the caring and loving.
Raise your hand if your group was more life-oriented. That is, who gets to live? Okay. Raise your hand if you were more who gets the axe. Both valid criteria, just different lenses in solving the problem, right? What else did you see?
I just saw different methodologies as far as process. You saw some where you had a lot of interaction, dialogue between people. Then you saw some of the folks that were a little more in the deep thinking aspect of it, where they were just reading and then passing along kind of the instructions. And then you saw some folks that were more into writing down their thoughts. So it was just kind of different, I guess, between groups, between individuals, as far as the methodology they took in defining who should live and who should die.
You should, by the way, take this home and share it with whoever you have back at home, and see if they come up with a different list than what you or your group would have chosen, to extend it a little bit further. Okay, so anybody else with any questions or comments on this activity? Yes.
You never stated that it was actually up to them to repopulate the species.
No, I didn't.
And you never said if there was embryos or...
It's purposeful ambiguity. Any other questions or comments? Yes. Boy, Phil Donahue really works hard.
You said there was a point.
The point, and there is one. Actually, if we had enough time, normally, like I said, I literally have got about 4 days worth of material crammed into this deck, and I tried to get just the best of the best out of it. What I would really like to do is do 2 exercises. Run one, where it's kind of medium stressful, you got plenty of time, just to see how it is working with people. Mix it up, teach a little something about process, then run an even more stressful exercise with people you don't know, but before you get started, ask you to really focus on the process first and actually document what process you're going to use. Give you less time in a more stressful situation. Actually, give you like 20 minutes, and then halfway through say, oh no, something's come up, you've only got 10 minutes. Most people usually throw the process right out. So the point, again, coming back out of it 50,000 feet view is, hey, there's some useful things we can do, and you don't have to be a rocket scientist or a statistician to know that having a leader is useful, right? Having someone who's accountable for keeping track of time, that's useful. Assigning somebody the role of, hey, do you mind writing this down for the group, is useful. Somebody to keep you on task, that's useful, right? Establishing agreed upon criteria, and there's stats in that, right? We can all agree that, hey, we got to make a decision, there's limited time, and we're not going to be happy, we're not all going to be 100% happy with the results. So how are we going to manage that conflict so that when we're done, we're all somewhat satisfied? That's the point. Did I answer your question? Other questions? If not, I've got about half an hour and about 3 days worth of material to cover. So let me see what I can give you to take home. That's also useful, hopefully interesting. Did you enjoy the exercise? Cool. That's what I hoped. All right. So we maybe kill this one for now. We might use it again in a minute. I didn't know we had it before. Can you hear me on this one? Everybody? I'm good. All right. 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Stephen Covey wrote a book. He's dead now. I think he rode his bicycle off a cliff or something a couple of years ago. But generally a well-regarded book. It's not heavy lifting. It's easy reading. You can pick it up anywhere. It was a bestseller. But this is one of the things out of that whole book that I think is really cool, and I usually keep it posted by my desk. He looked at the stuff that happens that you have to do and pay attention to every day in your life, at work or otherwise. There's stuff that's important and stuff that's not important. Then there's stuff that's urgent and stuff that's not urgent, right? So things break down into those two kind of those 2 ideas in 4 areas. In the upper quadrant, this is what you were hired to do, what your job description says you do, and if you don't go to this meeting or make this product or answer that phone call, you're going to get fired, okay? So that's what you have to do, all right? Now then there's all this other stuff that seems urgent, right? It's not important, but it wants your attention right now. This text, this phone call, this voicemail, this stupid envelope that arrived in the mail may or may not be important, but it looks like it's important because it has the sense of urgency about it. We call the stuff that falls into this category deception. And so you have to have your eyes open to avoid getting caught up in activities that are in the quadrant of deception. Now then, if we come over here, since we spend so much time dealing with urgent stuff, let's face it, we get tired. So what do? We occasionally take a break by, surfing the web or doing crossword puzzles or trivia, busy work, things that we do that doesn't, watching some mindless television show. A lot of sitcoms are like that. They're kind of funny, but they're not brilliant. You don't really do anything to make your life better, but it's relaxing. Doesn't make you a better person, but it kind of helps you relax a little bit. That's what we call the quadrant of waste. These activities, we do them, but they don't actually serve any goal-driven purpose. Then finally, we're up here in the quadrant of leadership and quality. This is where you want to spend your time if you can. Again, there's no statistics, there's no mathematics involved. You don't have to do any calculation. This just involves you knowing you and thinking about, okay, what do I really want to spend my time doing? Process fits up here in the quadrant of what Stephen Covey calls leadership and quality, what we call process improvement. But it's the same thing. And here's the cool part. When you invest time here, you gain time here. But you have to know that going in, because remember, this is what you have to do. But when you choose to do this, it makes the stuff over here diminish. So that's an easy one you can take home. You can find it. I'll put it up. I'll give it to somebody to post if you want it. This is one that I personally like very much because it reminds me, yeah, that's urgent, but it's really not all that important, so I'm going to ignore it. Or give it lip service, but not really pay attention to it. Okay, remember we had this slide in there earlier. These folks that are kind of have been disillusioned with process in the past, again, I'm trying to win back the faithful. There is a difference between tampering with the process versus fixing the problem. And so to that end, I don't know which one I want to use. This one's pretty funny. All right, we'll do this one because it's shorter. We'll do the other one maybe in a minute.
But your shoe is untied.
What do you mean?
Your laces. They are undone.
What are you proposing I do?
I think you should tie them.
I see.
You might want to do it now.
That seems rather hasty. I may need to determine my requirements first.
What?
Well, how do you know that what you are proposing will work?
Tying your shoes?
Yes. You have not yet even done a value stream proposition to determine if the problem you have identified is worth solving.
You're about to go down an escalator. If your lace gets caught, you could have real problems.
I'll have to consider this further. Would you help me form a working group to look into this? Can you help me write a charter?
Never mind. Just forget it.
You know, you'll never get anything done if you have that attitude. I think you need some Lean Six Sigma training.
Go away.
Here's another one. This one's
Hello,
even better.
Anne. Are you excited about our new Office 5S program?
I can hardly contain myself. This is going to be much better than our Office TQM initiative and the Office Six Sigma program, I'm sure. Woohoo, sign me up.
I'm glad you are excited.
Yes, I'm sure you can hear the excitement in my voice. Can I ask a question?
Normally no, but just this once. Go ahead.
Who told you to do 5S in the office?
Our consultant did.
And what does the consultant specialize in?
He teaches people how to do 5S.
Maybe you have heard this expression, when all you have is a hammer, then everything looks like a nail.
The consultant says you must mark where your hammer goes in your workspace. It makes you more efficient. The best factor is do this.
Hello? This is an office. I don't have a hammer at my desk.
See, you would know the hammer is missing if you had a tape outline showing where the hammer and your other tools go.
No. But I'm a marketing specialist. I create marketing proposals. I do not have a hammer.
Then you can put tape around your computer, your monitor, your phone, your stapler, your coffee cup, your purse, your mouse, the tape, the staple remover, that book, and those paper clips.
Why would I have to put tape around my monitor?
So it does not get lost. We will always know where the monitor is. You will not waste time looking for it. Our office will be more efficient.
Has anyone in our office ever have a monitor go missing?
I don't know. You must do this. It is on my goals and objectives to implement 5S.
So I will open my desk drawer and put tape around each of my pens and pencils?
Ah. The consultant says there will be a strict limit of 2 pens per desk. Any more than 2 pens is waste. We must not waste money. We must be lean.
Do I have to put tape around my family photos?
I'm glad you asked. You are no longer allowed to personalize your workspace. We must be lean.
How is this helping me do a better job?
The consultant says it will.
Why?
He was very adamant about it.
Why?
He yelled and screamed a lot in Japanese.
How do you know he is right?
I'm sure he is right. We paid him a lot of money.
Look, it takes us 6 weeks to get a new proposal out to a client. Maybe we should work on fixing that, reducing the cycle time. Maybe we will get more clients. We can grow the business.
We must do 5S.
Do you even know what the 5 S's are?
The 5 S's are 5 words that start with S. They are straighten, salami, stopwatch, Sasquatch, and salmonella.
That doesn't sound right.
The words are all Japanese. We must learn them. We are a learning organization. Don't you want to learn?
I still don't understand how this will help.
The consultant said this was very important. We will do the 5 S's or maybe even 6.
Will this make the organization more effective?
Effectiveness is not one of the 5 S's. That starts with the letter E, so it is not important right now.
But isn't the jail of 5S to improve effectiveness?
Our lean consultant did not explain that to me. I only know that a successful 5S program is the first step. It is always the first step. Always.
Yikes. I need a cup of coffee.
You can find the coffee in the new 5S approved location. But I'm afraid that you can no longer drink the coffee at your desk. That would be a 5S violation.
Really? A 5S violation? Why?
You ask why a lot. I will sign you up for the 5 Whys lean training.
But this is absurd.
You must follow the lean rules. Now I must go and fill out my 5S audit sheet. Goodbye.
Pretty good, huh? Back to our presentation, where we are on slide number 34. Okay, so a lot of the terminology that was just used in that video was Six Sigma terminology. That's why I wanted to use it there, because some of this stuff, all the bullet points up here, you'll recognize a lot of those were stuff that the folks in the video, or I should say the animated characters, were discussing. Lots of Japanese words. One is kaizen, which is, I actually have a video on that, and it's escaping me at the moment, but it's a culture of self-change. It's where you become, it's your responsibility to, it's hard because the actual Japanese characters have meaning, and I don't speak Japanese, but I've got a video. Anyway, you own the process. It's a part of examining yourself in order to make the process that you're a part of better. It's a one little word that has a much more complicated meaning. Six Sigma is easily identifiable when people start talking about black belts, yellow belts. I asked earlier, do we have any black belts or master black belts in the room? I'm not trained to that level. I'm somewhere in the middle. I'm a process engineer and a design engineer by training, so I'm a green belt with design for Six Sigma is actually my level, where I kind of swim in that spectrum. So Six Sigma is something I do, but I'm not an absolute expert. It's the black belts who are the experts. The Pareto we talked about. Fishbone we'll talk about here in a minute. The 5 Whys we'll talk about. That was something that came up in the video. The 5 S's. And the 7 times a waste, which we'll talk about in a minute. Six Sigma, where does this Sigma concept come from? This is interesting. Sigma is the Greek letter. When you see it written capital letters, it looks like a big E facing that away. But this is the lowercase Greek letter for sigma. And what sigma really means is standard deviation. That's how much things vary. This is actually the formula for standard deviation. And you might be familiar with it even if you go back to when you were in school. If you ever had a teacher who graded to the curve, what they were trying to do is take this whole big pile of F's right here and make the distribution where you have only a few people with F's and most people have C's. There's a formula for it. But the bell curve, which is something that's common in all statistics, is one of the first things that you'll learn when you talk about statistics. It has this shape, and we find it in nature all the time. Sigma, this is the average or the mean, this little red line right here. And the sigma is the measure of how variable things are. And for many of you, this may be review. But if we look at the area under the curve, That's one standard deviation above and below the mean. That accounts for 68% of everything of the area. That is, everything in between these two lines, that's 68% of the stuff. If we go out to 2 standard deviations on either side of the mean, you'll see 2 standard deviations is 95%, right? If you go all the way out to 6 standard deviations, 99.9997%. What that really equates to is if you have 1 million products or 1 million customer opportunities where you can succeed or fail, I think it's 3.4 something defects in 1 million if you run if you encompass everything. So by reducing your defects down to fewer than 6 sigma, that is what's on the outside of the bell curve, your success is in the middle, and you have so few defects that you can somehow manage them. There are places where that's necessary. If you want to put somebody in space, life support equipment, things like that require 6 sigma. In services, which has really just started adopting some of these, particularly in financial services, call centers and things like that, 3 and 4 sigma sometimes is quite enough. But anyway, the word 6 sigma, the idea is you reduce your defects down to a negligible area under the curve. Pardon me. Tim Woods, let me show you that one. I decided to throw this one in here because this guy does a better job of covering the material.
Well, what are the 7 wastes and why should you care? Well, let's find out in this edition of the Gemba Glossary. Now, it may be hard to believe, but numerous studies and observations have shown that anywhere from 40 to 90% of the work or effort that goes into a process or system has nothing but wasted effort. As such, being able to identify and ultimately counter what are commonly referred to as the 7 wastes is essential. And to help you remember the names of these 7 wastes, we'd like to introduce you to Mr. Tim Wood. Now, T stands for transportation, which is the movement of materials that adds no value to the product.
Or data.
I stands for inventory, which is any material or work on hand other than what's needed right now to satisfy customer demand.
Or data.
M stands for motion, which is any movement of people that doesn't add value to the product. Now, this includes walking and reaching for things. Next, anytime there's idle time created because materials, machines, inspection, or information are not ready for people, we have the waste of waiting. Now, overproduction, often called the mother of all waste, occurs when we make more products than our customers need. Next, we experience the waste of overprocessing when something's designed in such a way that uses more resources, such as space, energy, or people, than is truly required.
Or computer resources.
And finally, D stands for defects, which is simply work that is less than the level the customer, both internal and external, has requested. Now, Taiichi Ono, one of the chief architects of the Toyota production system, is credited with having defined these 7 types of waste that describe all activity that adds cost but no value. Now, Mr. Ono also preached that the most important thing any of us can do is go to Gemba, or the place the work is done, and relentlessly reduce any and all forms of waste. And finally, you may also encounter a so-called 8th form of waste, the waste of skills and talent, meaning that we're not fully utilizing the gifts our employees bring to the table. Now, adding this 8th waste to the list is quite easy, as our good friend Tim simply changes his last name from Wood to Woods. And that's an overview of the 7 wastes. Well, please be sure to subscribe to this channel and tune in to the next episode of the Gemba Glossary, where you'll learn the A to Z of continuous improvement.
So, back to our presentation. Uh-oh. Help. Okay, I need a Microsoft person. Can somebody tell me where my presentation went? Oh, it's one of those. View, normal. I feel so much better. That's the one, 35. Go to slide 34. There we go. Some other Six Sigma stuff. Again, this is the whirlwind tour. We could really talk for a long time about it. DMAIC is one word. It stands for 5 phases. When you're developing software, you see this a lot. Define, measure, analyze, improve, and control. So that the waterfall method of software development falls into this. It can actually be used in services and things like that too, change management. Over here's a control chart. This is really interesting. There's variation in everything, in every process that we do, right? If you say, for instance, the number of calls that come into a call center, right? We might expect if we say we're running a call center, and let's say 50 calls per day or per hour is our mean right here, our average. Then see, in this month, February, we had 40. We had, it looks like 35 or so. You see how you read that? Now, the important thing is, all of this stuff that falls between these red lines, that's normal, right? You're never going to get right on there, probably, maybe once or twice, but anything in here we can ignore. This, by the way, is called a control chart. Then we set these 2 limits, upper limit and the lower limit, upper control limit. And what we do, and this is part of Six Sigma, is looking at control charts. Anything in here, any variation that occurs is normal cause. Anything outside is from special cause, right? And these are actually standard deviations turned on their side, right? If you think of the bell curve being somewhere in here and the middle of the curve being here, then these are your standard. So the thing to focus on would be what happened here in July and what happened here. Look, it happened in the same time a year later. Maybe there's a pattern there. So again, not to go into great detail, but a control chart, that's another thing. That's a Six Sigma thing. The 5 whys. We talked about that in the video. This is one of those things you don't need any math at all. If you ask the question why enough times, you can frequently, and 5 is an arbitrary number, but 5 is usually good. You can, and kids do this all the time. I want to stay up and watch such and such show. You can't do that. Why? Give me an answer. Give me an answer. Why can't you stay up? It's past your bedtime. Why do I have this bedtime? Why do I need to get up in the morning? Why do I need to go to school? Why do I need to learn? There you go. That's the ultimate answer. Because I want to get a good job. So, son, I would love for you to be able to watch this show. But if you stay up and watch the show, you're going to be digging ditches for the rest of your life. And you don't really want that now, do you? Anyway, the 5 whys, you can apply that to a business need. And again, you don't need any math to do this. But this is one of those fancy process engineering terms. The 5 whys. Fishbone analysis. We could think about our spaceship Eden 2 exercise, right? And we could pretend, okay, we're having some problems on the spaceship. Now let's figure out why our people are dying all of a sudden. Okay, is it the life support systems? Is it some virus, right? And each one of those things that we look at would be a stem. And then we look at each one of those. Okay, we have the life support systems. Is it the gravity shield? Is it the radiation shield? And each one of those would come up. And we could dig down in there like a tree, and it ends up looking like a fishbone or a Ishikawa diagram if you prefer the Japanese words. But again, one feature of the Six Sigma stuff is it has lots of Japanese words. Okay, Six Sigma and CMM. I can tell I've only got a few minutes left, so I'll only be able to give you the barest overview of CMM. And that's actually the area where I have a great deal more expertise, but perhaps we'll just set the seed for another presentation maybe later on down the road where we talk in more depth about CMM. Six Sigma is a bunch of, as you see, all those tools. It's like a big toolbox. Remember in the recording when all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail? So think of Six Sigma as a big toolbox, but you're still looking for things to which you can apply your tools. That's the nature of the Six Sigma kind of approach. But there are other things that you have to transform, like the culture. That is, we're all working together. We're not in competition. And if we focus on turning out better products, we will all succeed together or we will all fail. Major cultural shift from where we are. Six Sigma is different. CMM is different. CMM, back in the day, computers were really expensive. They filled up a room like the room we're standing in. So when it cost millions and millions of dollars and people were cheap and programmers were cheap, you spent your money on the hardware and you didn't bother thinking about how much the software costs. Well, then things changed. Now, you're going to lay out a certain amount for your hardware, but particularly if you're an organization, an enterprise, your software costs are far greater. Or if you're actually developing software, your development costs are enormous compared to the minuscule amount. Okay, everybody's got a computer, we're done. We don't have to buy any more computers. We're spending all this money developing stuff. So it came in the early 80s. The government was spending, the military particularly, was spending a lot of money developing custom software that was always way over budget and years behind schedule if the project completed at all. So the federal government put out a request for proposals. Carnegie Mellon came back and they founded the Software Engineering Institute, which developed this thing called the CMM. Later it became the CMMI, which stands for integrated, because it was originally for software development. And then they realized, we can use this for services. We could also use this model for contractor management and other things. So the I is just an integration and a further refinement of the ideas. Again, this is the thing that I'm really, really way into, but I'm going to try to stay in the few minutes we have here at a really high level, give you an overview of it, and maybe we can come back another time and revisit it. The thing about CMM, Capability Maturity Model, is what it stands for. What it means is, how good is your organization, how mature is your organization, and what is it capable of consistently producing? And what happened was the Software Engineering Institute looked at what the best practices in the world were for producing software and other things, and they started to see some patterns. I'll show you what those are. But because this is a model, it is necessarily incomplete. It is a framework. I'm going to skip that. Okay, you guys have seen this in school in your psychology class, right? That is, we all want to be up at the top of the pyramid where we're living and being our best, highest purpose, and we're all what they call self-actualizing and living our fullest life. But it's kind of hard to do that when you're in a military zone and there are bullets flying over your head, right? You're not going to write really good poetry when you're worried about whether you have oxygen, those kinds of things, right? If you want to get to that top level, you have to deal with the things that are down below it. Yeah, you can write poetry under fire, but you'll probably write better poetry if you're safe and secure and people love you and you're fed, right? That's the idea. Same thing here. This is how the CMM, or the CMMI, whichever word you choose, is laid out. It's in 5 levels. Level 1 is just where you wake up in the morning and you don't have any process defined. Right? Like when we dug into the task, but we didn't say, okay, here's how we're going to make decisions, here's how we're going to choose the leader, this is how we're going to manage our time. We just did it, right? We were CMM level 1. Then there are some things we do at level 2 to manage what we're doing, right? Then at level 3, we're actually going to go a step further, define how it is we're going to do it, and then, you can manage it before you actually have a good process. You may have a process that's managed, but it may not be any good, but that's okay. Then it's not until levels 4 and 5 where you're really getting to this kind of Zen level of process improvement. We aren't even going to talk about those today. Not even going to. Here's what it looks like on a page. Remember I told you before, at level 1, which is where we all were when we started this process, in order to get it done or to have any measure of quality, it really depended on everybody in your group be good at it, right? They're personal what they brought to the table because we didn't have any process in place. Level 2 is where we're, like we talked about, project management. And these things over here in the third box, where's my cursor? Requirements management, project planning. These are the processes that you focus on in level 2. These are the processes that you work on in level 3. See how it breaks down? And so I won't have time to go into depth on this. Believe me, I would really like to if we could do it at another time. These are the processes in CMM level 2. The process areas. There's requirements management. That is, how do you control when people give you work? People, I need you to build this thing for me. That's different from coming up with the project plan for building that thing. And that's different from managing the project plan. Project planning is an engineering discipline. This is a management discipline, monitoring control. And so on. The thing that is really important, and I have a friend, hopefully I'll be able to bring her with me one time. She's actually an expert in software quality assurance. You may know quality assurance like people who do testing. Well, this is different. This is, are you following the process, and show me the records. It's a whole other thing. Anyway, here's the stuff that goes on at level 3, and so forth. I'm going to show you this thing, which is what we talked about here. Requirements management. Each one of these boxes goes into more detail like this, okay? But the stuff around the outside is more or less the same on all of them. So that up here where there's a goal, here is, do we have a policy that says we're going to do this thing? Here is, do we have people whose job it is to do it? Do we have some way of managing it? And do we have people, those QA people I talked about a minute ago, whose job it is to make sure we did it? So just for instance, here's requirements. Let me find one that's more interesting. Project planning. Well, okay, that was as good as any, I guess. Requirements management, short. Okay, let's look at, you see, we have, this is what CMM looks like when you put it in place. We are going to do, the goal is, we're going to do requirements management, okay? We have a policy that says our organization manages requirements according to what's found in this catalog. We have people over here whose job it is to do it. We train them to do it, and we give them the tools to do that. Over here, we get the stakeholders involved, we collect the data, and we go and periodically check to see if we're doing requirements management. It's a level of abstraction, but once you get used to it, they're all the same. Now I'm just going to block that out. These are the actual activities for doing requirements management. We have some way of determining what our requirements are. Ideally, you want to talk to the people who are the stakeholders, right? You're going to tell me you want me to build you a relationship management software. You want to give me your requirements? Okay, we're going to have a meeting here, and 30 days we're going to stop gathering requirements and start to work. We have some agreement. If you want to have changes, that's a change control. That's different. We have a way of doing that. We get your sign-off on it, our sign-off on it, right? And we agree this is what we're going to do. Because, see, if you want me to take that module out, it doesn't make the project smaller. And if you wait until, until halfway through the development cycle, it actually makes the project bigger, right? It's counterintuitive, but people who don't write software don't know that. How are we going to manage the changes? Are we going to trace what your requirement gives me down into the folks who do the testing? And so on. So I'm going to have to wrap it down because we're getting running out of time. But I think I had one more really cool thing to show you. Let's see if I can get down here to it. This is my old boss. I'll share this with you. He died this year. He was the best of the best. He used to work for the President of the United States. He taught me software, and he was a great guy. So I've got a lot of his data in here that I'll share with you some other time. What I wanted to leave you with was another thing that doesn't require any math or any statistics or anything other than just understanding you and what makes you tick. When I found this, it's another one of those things I stuck up on the cube wall. What we have is a really cool Venn diagram. How to be happy. Figure out what you do well and what you want to do. Now, if you do it well and you want to do it, then learn how to make money from it. If you do it well and people can pay you to do it, then learn how to say no if they're not paying you to do it. You get me for free tonight. I actually love doing this and I'm good at it, but I'm not charging for it. But that's because I hope to get something else out of it. Maybe a job. You might mention me to your coworkers. What you want to do and what you can get paid to do, well, get better at that, right? Go give yourself some training or give yourself some practice doing it. And finally, if you really want to get into your Zen spot, you'll see it's the intersection of what you do well, what you want to do, and what you can be lucky enough to convince somebody else to pay you to do. So somewhere out on the periphery of this presentation, that's another piece of internal, personal, makes me feel good, self-actualizing process that I think you can all take home and without a calculator, stick on your cue ball and maybe make your lives better. And that is all my time. Thank you.